onto the section which is really benefiting students. Because as well as benefit to the organisation, as well as a benefit to SUSU, it's about the benefit to the individual students as well. So the first is about enhancing your employability. Just a quick raise of hands, because I haven't been very interactive at all. Who's heard of Graduate Passport? That's not as embarrassing as I thought it would be. So the Graduate Passport is the university's kind of accreditation scheme for all the extra activity it gets involved in. It's only for this university. There are other universities that have similar schemes, but it's only for us. And the penetration into the marketplace isn't as strong as it could be. What the NUS are working on is a national graduate accreditation scheme that's been worked on with employers, big employers and small employers, so that you don't just come out with a colloquial graduate passport for Southampton. You can come out with a degree with potentially an additional aspect to your degree, an additional bit of accreditation that employers across the country and potentially internationally will recognise. This is a huge bit of work going on at the moment, and it's being piloted in about 20 unions, I'll be correct if I'm wrong, about 20 unions this year. This is exceptionally exciting for you to give you real benefit. The demo I'm using kind of as an example. The organisation is run and directed by students. At conference this year, students called for there to be a national demo. There's a lot of debate, a lot of discussion, there's lots of controversy, but there was a majority who wanted this to happen. Now the important thing is, at the moment, this is going to happen, and this will impact on the image of students, and absolutely give an impact. And it is going to be how the whole country will see, gain an opinion of students. And we have no impact in that, we have no say in that, we don't shape this at all. If we thought it was a bad idea, we couldn't argue against it. If we thought it was a good idea, we couldn't make it even better. And we are out of that discussion. What this thing provides is not just national representation ignoring us. At the moment, they provide national representation, they talk to students, but we don't have any say on that voice. And the chance to have a say on that voice, I think, is exceptionally important. And we have a real chance to shape that. I'm going to now move over and rabbit on to Chloe, who will talk about this far better than I will.
Hello, my name's Chloe. Liberation. So NUS's Liberation campaign is kind of an umbrella term which joins all of NUS's campaigning for equality. So under this banner falls campaigning, policy and activism for black students, female students, LGBT students, students with disabilities and international students, though this list is by no means exhaustive. It's worth noting that all of these student cohorts have an elected student officer to represent them, so just like a sabbatical officer. So there's a black students officer, an international officer, etc. So that's really showing NUS's commitment to these issues. So some examples of exceptional campaigning that NUS have done through the Liberation. So for example, for black students, so NUS have got a relationship with the Network for Black Professionals, the NBP, not to be confused with the BNP. So they have a relationship whereby black students are offered mentoring support, internships, career coaching, conferences and networking opportunities to help them overcome discrimination in what can be a pretty disgustingly racist graduate kind of environment. I'm wearing my Black History t-shirt right now. So for female students, the Women's Officer and women's officers all over the country, they choose 3 areas to focus on each year, and it's kind of what's relevant, what's going on at the moment. To aid the fight for equality in student unions for women. So last year, for example, the 3 areas were ending violence against women students, which amongst other things developed a zero tolerance campaign to tackle harassment off campus, which I know many female students face. Fighting Cuts, which amongst other goals aided women's groups all around the country to fight against disproportionate cuts to women's services with research, campaign tours and activist training, and improving women's representation, so which launched the I Will campaign, which is what Sasha previously mentioned, is the female empowerment training. So it's female students nationally get to go to workshops, and it teaches women like sort of assertiveness things, public speaking, leadership qualities, because quite frequently women are left out of these debates and left out of student representation. I would know, being one of only 2 female sabbaticals out of 7 currently, a trend that's now happened 2 years on the trot. Also for LGBT students, NUS launched an Out in Sport campaign. So it's part of NUS's commitment to tackle homophobia and transphobia in sport in universities. So the campaign aims to understand sporting experiences of lesbian, gay, bi and trans students in further and higher education, while supporting unions and institutions in making sport more inclusive. So at the moment, our Vice President of Sports Development, Dean, and all the history of them, they haven't really had any kind of training in how do you deal with the very, very kind of nuanced issues of transgender students in sport. It's, you know, a rising issue, and we don't have any skills to tackle this, and we're really letting students down. So joining NUS, kind of, that would absolutely
So this next is about genuine campaigning for international students. So the two stories I want to tell you both relate to London. You'll have heard, and I've blogged about London Met, with the UKVA coming down exceptionally hard on them and threatening to deport 3,000 students within 60 days. Now, I'm not going to stand here and defend London Met. They did appallingly. They weren't running themselves well as a university at the time, and I'm not necessarily defend them. But the impact on those students was completely disproportionate. UKVA came down and said, even though you've got valid visas that at the time were awarded with a university with highly trusted status, which is what you need to award visas to students, we have it as University of Southampton, you must leave this country in 60 days. This was an appalling situation. Unions around the country spoke out, and the NUS International Officer, Daniel Stevens, coordinated this outrage and engaged with government, engaged in the form of protest, and the NUS itself engaged in a judicial review, which has been called. This is the judicial review, and the NUS took an unprecedented step in launching legal action to become a part of this review as an independent expert. And those students have been given a 1-year reprieve. They've given a 1-year reprieve from deportation, which I think is a phenomenal victory. The reason I tell this story is if this happened to us, there is no one here to support us. It's not about people coming and telling Susu what to do. In these situations, it's about who is going to actually speak and support Susu in this situation. And there would be no one to come to us. And I would say, don't believe for a moment that it was because London Met were a low-ranking university that they got targeted. All the universities are at risk of this. It is about how they register and report their international students. Now, I don't think we're suddenly going to have it taken away, but we shouldn't sit here and think because we're a Russell group, there is no risk. The second is students from London who are made to, in the first week when you get here, when you've got a visa, you've got to get your registration done at the local police station, which isn't too bad in Southampton. Because you're going to, because there's police stations around. In London, there were 3 stations for 30,000 people. This was appalling, and there are videos online of students queuing from 10 p.m. in the evening in the wind and the rain, having to wait until 6 a.m. in the morning when the queues started emptying, and the queues would stop at 7 a.m. and they would queue until 5 p.m. This was appalling, but in this country, we were doing this to students that were invited. And again, the NUS stepped in, and that practice was banned, and these students have been able to submit their forms without queuing for horrendous hours. These are huge wins. And the final thing I want to mention is the Prevent agenda. The government's working on Prevent agenda at the moment, which at its worst potentially is asking unions to submit the membership list of their Islamic society. Now there's a lot going on in London at the moment, that's the beginning of where they're focusing. But again, if it came to us, and if we decided our students shouldn't be subjugated in that way, or persecuted in that way, we're alone in that. We're absolutely alone in that. Our students don't have that additional protection. We don't have that other layer to go and seek support. And I think that's a really important and strong message. And again, that is on the horizon, that is coming. And I don't know fully what we are going to and can do about it. But it is a very real risk, and it is on its way. So I think that's the end of this section, more generally.
It's very important to point out that hardly anyone knows about this Prevent agenda. It's a completely racist attack on Islamic students by the government. And the NUS are trying to not only out the message, but also protect Islamic students in this country. But what we're going to look at now is myth busting, and Notice very kindly produced this lovely logo, which we're going to look at their points and actually address directly, just because we think it's important to actually give what we see as the truth on the points that they've raised. And Sam, I think you were going to do this part as well.
Yeah, I can do it.
Just because it's easier.
You can tell that we finished the actual putting together.
Professionally.
We've been busy doing our other work. So the first one I want to tackle, so what we really want to tackle is, fair enough for raising these issues, I'm not having a go for raising them. But last time there's a lot of myth going around, and to be honest, the information was awful that we received back from all over the place. The NUS were terrible at sending good information. It was hard to seek the information, and this is partly why we had the independent auditors review and why we want to tackle some of these. So the first is that NUS affiliation will cost up to 50 grand a year. I'm not going to contest that one. But which means less money to spend on our clubs, societies, AU and the arts. I can contest this by the fact that we've just increased spend on clubs, on societies, club societies and the arts. We've increased it from 26 to £80,000, and we have a working surplus of £140,000, which will potentially be larger next year. And we choose where we spend the money. Now, clubs and societies had 26k spent on them for years and years and years. That was because we chose to give them that much money. We could have chosen more, and this year we made a choice and gave them more. With a surplus of that size, there's no reason we would choose to take it away from them. We don't have to operate with a surplus of that size, and it doesn't match up. We will make the decisions we make on where we need to spend, and that will not be based upon another area that we need to spend. That's a really important fact, and the surplus means that we absolutely have the freedom to do what we need. Last year, again, it's important to note, the AU budget underspent by £40,000 last year. Now, we're trying to get them to spend their money, that's pretty important, but we're not a poor union, and this is a really important thing to get across. We are an island of affluence, is one way of putting it. But we're not going to skimp on societies, whatever we do. If we built a new bit of a building, we're not going to suddenly start spending on societies, and that costs a downside more than the NUS affiliation. And finally, we spend comparative amounts of money on all kinds of things. So the bridge cost us £400,000, £300,000 from SUSU, and the affiliation to Bucks cost us £15,000, plus another £15,000 of match fees for all you sports enthusiasts out there. We spend amounts of money on all kinds of things across, and we don't think we skimp on other areas. My second is affiliation to Nussel shops, bars and campus will have their products limited. Yeah, it will to a certain extent. So the way it works is you have to buy off the list of products that they give you, but they work for students' unions, and they buy the products you want. So the difference is, we're with Heineken at the moment. If I want to go to Heineken and say, hey Heineken, can I buy Carling? They'll say, well, jog on, go to another company, buy it from Carling. If we go to Nussel and say, hey Nussel, we're not happy with enough stock in our Strongbow, whatever it is that your favourite brand is, we can go to a Nussel conference and we can change that membership list because it's owned by the students. It was mentioned earlier that there is a cost, there absolutely is a cost to joining Nussel, and you have to buy 60 shares in Nussel and each share costs £1. So at the cost of £60, we buy the right to have a say in how it's grown. And that's really, really important. And the whole point of the service is to use economies of scale to get the best value for students' unions. But the other important thing is, student unions are about principles. They are about community, and they're about ethics, and they're about ideas. And Nussel has the clout to go to the Vice President of Coke when they're delivering bad practices for their workers. And there are times where they can go to the heads of these companies and talk about their ethics and their morals, and it goes way further than just buying a consortium. And the final thing is, if we don't want it, we don't join it. It's as simple as that. We don't have to join Nussel. And as I've mentioned before, I believe we absolutely do have the money to invest in it. This is what the students want. Maybe we want it, maybe we don't. It's not forced. I think there's some brilliant pros to it. And the final two, which is the 12% discount has no more benefits than your student ID, except the benefits that you can't get on your student ID. Which are things like Amazon, Spotify, EasyJet, Megabus. Students save hundreds of pounds on their travel when they live far away. And again, I'm not a big fan of the ID card. Sorry, this is Professor Fallacy. I'm not a fan of the ID card, of the discount card debate. I think it's simplistic, and what we try to show you here is there's so much more to discuss and so much more to be interested in. But that is just wrong. And probably you don't need to buy an NUS extra card. It does the union gets about £4 from it, and the NUS gets about £4 from it, when you do buy them, but it's not forced upon you. And we wouldn't force our students to buy it at all. That's not the ethics of this union. And finally, independence, because 2 years ago, to be fair, I campaigned on that when I was campaigning against. It is your students' union. The NUS has no right to tell us what to do. That is a fact. We affiliate to them, and we tell them what to do. We go to conference, we go to zone conference, we engage with their officers if we want, or maybe we don't at all and we just take some of the benefits. But we tell them what to do. If they come up with a policy, and the no platform policy is a classic example. No platform says that the NUS officers won't share a platform with someone who's been determined, someone who speaks, it's also hate speech. If someone's been determined as an organisation that absolutely promotes hate speech and promotes racism, I will be correct on the exact details of that, because I'm doing it off the top of my head. Officers of the NUS will not share a platform with them. A number of years ago, which I did reference 2 years ago, Durham had an email. Durham felt they were being censored by the NUS, and they got an email from 2 NUS officers from independent liberation campaigns, autonomous campaigns, saying that this shouldn't be the case. They emailed the VC and saying that you shouldn't have the BNP come to Durham and speak. They can't tell you what to do. Those officers were censured. Centrally, the NUS went up and apologised, and they actually weren't stopped from holding that. They weren't, the officers didn't have the right to do that, and they were censured. We have officers all the time in SUSU that go off and do things they're not allowed to do to the organisation. Doesn't mean we should shut down SUSU. And so it absolutely is your students' union. If you don't agree with the policy, we don't follow it. It's absolutely as simple as that. And to summarise, because I think the next bit is questions, just to kind of summarise what we said, that's a huge barrage of information. You can see it's being filmed.